Perianth is nothing but wherein you cannot differentiate in a flower which is the corolla and which is the calyx, because both looks the same. Take a pea pod and just open it. All the ovules will be arranged in one margin only. So therefore it is called as marginal placentation. Calyx is the outermost whorl, because calyx is the sepal, green reduced leaf-like structures which forms the outermost whorl of the flower. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this session on First PUC Biology. I am Dr. Divya, Biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. So in this session, let us study about the parts of the flower, wherein we'll concentrate about the androecium and the gynoecium, because we have already finished studying in the previous session about the corolla and the calyx. And then we'll move on to understanding some of the MCQs under this particular topic. So to start with androecium, that is it forms the third whorl of the flower. So the flower is made up of totally 4 whorls, that is the outer whorl which is the calyx or the sepal, the inner to the calyx or the sepal, it is the corolla or the petal, and then comes the androecium, and the most innermost whorl, that is the gynoecium. So talking about the androecium, it is the male reproductive part of the flower wherein it bears the stamens. So this is a stamen. So you can see the androecium here and how beautifully the pollen grains are there on the anther. The anther has dehisced, or it has split open and the pollen grains have come out. So this is all together we call it as the stamen. So what is there in the stamen? The stamen consists of an anther which are usually bilobed. So the anthers are usually bilobed, wherein it has 2 lobes, one and a second lobe. So it is usually bilobed and it has a long filament or a stalk. Filament, or we can also call it as the stalk. So this is the structure of the androecium, which is nothing but the stamen. So the stamen is nothing but the anther and the stalk or the filament together constitutes the stamen, which forms the male reproductive part of the flower, that is the androecium. Now when we take a transverse section, so a transverse section is cutting something like this. So when you take a transverse section of the anther, so when I cut the anther like this, what we can see the pollen sacs in it. So these are the pollen sacs, and in the pollen sacs, the pollen grains will be produced. Pollen grains. And these pollen grains are the ones which will be carried during the time of pollination. It will be carried to the stigma. It will get deposited on the stigma and the fertilization process will take place and the setting of the seed will occur. So this is what happens. So this is about the androecium, which is the male reproductive organ. Next, based on the position of the androecium or how the androecium are attached to the corolla or attached to the petal, the stamens are of, or the flowers can be called as of 2 types, that is epipetalis and epiphyllous. So in this case, stamens, if it is attached to the petals, we call it as epipetalis. Especially in the Solanaceae members, for example, the potato, brinjal, the chili and all that, they all are placed under one order called as polysiphonals because of this particular reason only. What is that? Their stamens are attached to the petals. If you can see the stamens, they come directly attached to the petals like this. So if I draw a petal here, they come attached to the petal and then the stamens will be free. So the stalk of the stamen that is there, it will be attached to the, or the filament that is there, it will be attached to the petal. So such a condition is called as epipetalis stamen, which is commonly seen in Solanaceae members. Here I have taken the example of brinjal flower. Next, epiphyllous stamens. Here the stamens are attached to the perianth. Now what is a perianth? We have studied this also in the previous session, wherein I told you perianth is nothing but wherein you cannot differentiate in a flower which is the corolla and which is the calyx, because both looks the same. So here, for example, I cannot say here which is the calyx and which is the corolla, because this also looks like a corolla, this also looks like the corolla only, this also looks like the corolla, or this looks like the calyx and this also it looks like the calyx. You cannot differentiate because both are of the same color. For example, lily. So here, if you can see, the stamens are attached. So this portion, the stamens are attached directly to the perianth. So that type of attachment of stamens to the perianth, if flowers are there wherein the stamens are attached to the perianth, then we call such flowers are epiphyllous flowers. Next, based on the filaments of the stamens, like how are the filaments of the stamens arranged, or how are the stamens arranged, in how many groups or bundles they are arranged. Based on that, the flowers can be called as monadelphous flowers, diadelphous and polyadelphous. Adelphous to adhere, to form groups. So here monoadelphous means they are united in only one bunch. If you can see here, all the stamens come and meet at a particular point, forming just one bunch. It is just one bunch. It is like in a classroom, you put the students and make them sit compacted in 2 or 3 benches, they'll form a group. That is one bunch of students. Now you make 2 rows and you make few students to sit in one row and few students to sit in another row. You'll have 2 bunches, right? Same way here also. Here it is one bunch. Say for example, the China rose. So China rose, hibiscus, which is commonly called as the China rose. Next, diadelphous stamens. In diadelphous stamens, what happens is the stamens are united in 2 bundles or 2 bunches. Best example is pea flower. So wherein you can see here one stamen is separated and all the other stamens form a bundle, if you can see here very clearly. So it was like this, one stamen here and all the other stamens were in bundles, or they form bundles like this. So that is 2 different bundles of stamens. It is called diadelphous. Di means 2, diadelphous. Next, polyadelphous, which is usually seen in citrus flowers, that is lemon, orange and all that. So wherein the stamens are grouped into more than 2 bunches or bundles. So here you can see, here one bundle is there, here is the second one, here is the third one, and next the 4th one and 5th one is on the other side. So they form bundles. So you have one bundle of stamen, next one forms a separate bundle here like this of stamen, next a third bundle. So they form separate bundles, 1, 2, 3. So this is called as polyadelphous condition, which is commonly seen in citrus flowers. So next, talking about the gynoecium. So the gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower, wherein what is it made up of? So the gynoecium consists of the stigma. So stigma is called as the receptive organ. It is the receptive organ. Receptive means to receive something. So what does stigma receive? So stigma receives the pollen grain. Now how can the stigma receive the pollen grain? Why? Because the stigmas are always sticky and hairy, so that when the pollen grain comes and falls on it, it doesn't get washed away easily from the surface of the stigma. So that is why they are always sticky, and they are the structures where the pollen grains come and fall on it. So therefore they are the receptive organs for the pollen grains. And the stigma, it contains a style. So style, the stalk or the filament is called as the style. Next, it contains the carpel, or we can call it as the ovary. It contains the ovary. And inside the ovary, what is there? So inside the anther, we got to know pollen sacs are there wherein pollen grains are produced. In this case, inside the ovary, when we take again, when I cut the ovary like this, transverse section, and observe it under the microscope, we can see that they are made up of locules. This is one locule, second locule, wherein it has ovules. These are the ovules, and this is the placenta. The ovules are connected to the ovary through a placenta. And always remember, the ovules will form the seeds and the ovary will form the fruit. That we will study later. So this is about the gynoecium. Next, based on the number of carpels or gynoecium that are present, it can be called as one carpel or more than one carpel. So monocarpellary or more than one carpel. So if it is more than one carpel, they are of 2 types. It can be Apocarpus or it can be syncarpus. Apocarpus means the carpels are free. Say for example, in the case of lotus and in the case of rose, the carpels are free, they are not united. So it is apocarpus. Here in this case, in the case of mustard and tomato, the carpels are fused. So in the case of mustard and tomato, the carpels are fused. So if the carpels are fused, we call it as syncarpus. Next, talking about placentation. Placentation. What is placentation? So this is a very important question which usually appears in the exam. So placentation, the types of placentation. So placentation is nothing but the arrangement of ovules inside a ovary. It's called as placentation because obviously wherever the placenta is there the ovule has to be there because the ovule is always connected to the ovary through a placenta, and the placenta acts as a nutritive structure which carries the nutrition from the ovary to the ovules. Just like how from the mother the food goes or the nutrition goes to the baby through an umbilical cord, right, which is also called as the placenta. Same way it works here as well. So now based on how the ovules are arranged, there are different types of placentation: marginal, axial, parietal, then we have free central and basal. So what is marginal placentation? So here you can see the placenta or the ovules are arranged in one particular margin. So you take a pea pod and just open it. All the ovules will be arranged in one margin only. So therefore it is called as marginal placentation. Axial placentation. So axial placentation means wherein from the axis, if you can see, they'll have locules, and wherever in the locule that axis is there from the center, you can see the ovules arising. So it is called axial placentation. Parietal placentation means the ovules are situated in the periphery. That is towards the side. It is situated in the periphery or towards the side. And here no locules are there, but they have some locular structures, but it is not an actual locule. It looks like a locule, but they don't have the locule, and it is parietal placentation. Next is free central placentation. Free central placentation is also unilocular, where no locules are there, and at the center the ovules are arranged with the and not in locules. So now if there was locules here like this, divisions, it would have been axial placentation because from the axis the ovules would have been arising, right? So but here there is no locule formation, therefore just like that the ovules are present at the center or the placentation is at the center. That is free central placentation. Next, basal placentation. Basal placentation is seen only in monocotyledons, wherein only one ovule they will have which will arise from the base. So this is the placenta which arises from the base, and there is the ovule here. So this is nothing but basal placentation. Monocots only exhibit basal placentation. So this was about the placentation. So now we know about the gynoecium, the androecium, and based on the arrangement of gynoecium and androecium, what are the flowers called, and also we got to know what placentation is, the different types of placentation. We shall move into learning about the MCQs. So dash is the outermost whorl of the flower. So this is something related to the earlier sessions that I had done. So just brush up. Dash is the outermost whorl of the flower. Is it corolla, calyx, androecium or gynoecium? So calyx is the outermost whorl because calyx is the sepal, green, reduced leaf-like structures which forms the outermost whorl of the flower. Corolla is the next whorl which is inner to the calyx, androecium is inner to corolla, and gynoecium is inner to androecium, and it is the innermost whorl. Next, the green leaf-like structure that protects the bud, it is the sepals. So sepals, because whenever we see a rose bud, for example, on top it has the green leaf-like structure that entirely covers the fragile bud in order to protect it, right? So that is nothing but sepals. It is made up of sepals, or they can give the option here as calyx because sepals are nothing but calyx. Next, gamosepalous means gamo. Gamo means fused, poly means free. So gamosepalous, here sepals are free, sepals attached to corolla, sepals united, sepals absent. Here gamosepalous means sepals are united. Polysepalous means sepals are free. So it is polysepalous, for sepals are free. So sepals attached to corolla is not the right answer because it doesn't have a term. Sepals absent is also not the right answer. The right answer here is option C. Gamosepalous means sepals united. Next, as I told you, the question can be framed like this. Polysepalous means sepals are free. They are not united to one another. We had seen right in the previous session wherein sepals united in the case of hibiscus, gamosepalous. In the case of rose, it was polysepalous. Okay. Or an example for gamosepalous, an example for polysepalous, like that also MCQs can be framed. Okay, the arrangement of sepals or petals in a flower is called, what is it called? Is it placentation? No, placentation is the arrangement of ovules inside the ovary. Venation is something to do with the veins in the leaves, how the veins are in the leaves. Inflorescence is the arrangement of flowers in a floral axis. It is estivation. Always don't get confused with inflorescence and estivation. Inflorescence is the arrangement of flowers in the floral axis. Estivation is the arrangement of petals. Okay, petals. So how they are arranged. So the right answer here is estivation. So the arrangement of sepals or petals in a flower is called estivation. And we had seen in the previous session, right, valvate estivation, twisted imbricate. If not, you can just see the previous session and understand it. The following is correct for imbricate estivation. What is imbricate estivation? So if you just brush up what we had studied in the previous session, you need to know that imbricate estivation means the sepals, they overlap but not in a particular direction. So that is about imbricate. The margin of sepals do not overlap. So margin of sepals do not overlap is valvate estivation. This is valvate. The margin of sepals or petals overlap with one another in a particular direction. It is twisted. Twisted estivation. The margin of sepals or petals overlap but not in any particular direction. It is called as imbricate estivation. This is the answer. The margin of sepals and petals are not united. So this has not got anything to do with estivation. So the right answer here is option C. The question can be asked, the following is correct for valvate estivation. The following is correct for twisted estivation. So like that also question can be framed. Okay, the following is not correct. Now what are we supposed to find? Which is not correct for papillonaceous estivation. So papillonaceous estivation, instead they can frame the question as vexillary estivation also, because both are one and the same. Or they can ask, the following is not correct about the estivation in pea flower, in gulmohar, in beans. That way also they can ask. So you have to understand that. Have standard petal that overlaps two lateral petals. Yes, that is true because they have one large standard petal like this which overlaps with two lateral petals like this, right? So that is correct for this. And the wing petal overlaps with keel petal. Yes, this wing petal that is there, it overlaps with two small keel petals like this. That is also true about this. There are 8 petals overlapping each other. No, because they have only 5 petals overlapping each other. 1, 2, 3. That is, sorry, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wherein this is the standard petal, this is the lateral or the wing petal, and this is the keel petal. So therefore, they have only 5 petals. It is not 8 petals. This is wrong. So therefore, the right option here is there are 8 petals overlapping each other is not the characteristic of papillonaceous estivation. Why? Because there are 5 petals overlapping each other. That's the right one. The keel petals are the smallest. Yes, that's true because here the keel petals, they are the smallest here. So therefore, the option C is the right answer for not being a characteristic of papillonaceous estivation or vexillary estivation. Next. Dash is a male reproductive organ. Stigma belongs to female, that is gynoecium. Ovary belongs to female, gynoecium. Stamen, carpel. Carpel also comes under gynoecium. It is stamen is the male reproductive organ which comes under andrecium. The pollen, next question. The pollen sacs are present in stigma. No, stigma doesn't have pollen sac because pollen sac is something related to the male reproductive system wherein it produces the pollen grain. So, stigma is the female reproductive part. Style, No, carpal. So it is in the anther exactly. So style, of course, the filament of the stamen is called as style, but that doesn't produce the pollen. It is the anther that produces the pollen grain. In the anther, pollen sacs will be there, and in the pollen sac, pollen grains will be produced. Therefore, pollen sacs are present in the anther. Carpal is the something related to gynoecium. Okay, next question. If stamens are attached to perianth, they are epipetalous? No. In epipetalous, stamens are attached to corolla, that is the petals. Here, perianth means it is epiphyllous. Epiphyllous is the right answer. Gamopetalous means petals are fused. Polypetalous means petals are free. So, it has nothing to do with the stamens here. So, therefore, the right answer here is epiphyllous. Next, staminode is a dash stamen. Staminode. So, staminode is a sterile stamen, fertile, filamentous, pollen producing. It is a sterile stamen. Sterile stamen, or they can give the option here as infertile. Infertile means it is not capable of producing pollen grains. Therefore, they are sterile. So, that is called as sterile. So, staminode means those anthers which are not capable of producing pollen grains, or those stamens which are not capable of producing pollen grains are called as staminode. And therefore, staminode is a sterile stamen, or the option can be given as infertile stamen. Fertile, no. Filamentous, no. Pollen producing, that's not the right option. Because if it is pollen producing, it is fertile. So, therefore, 12th one, dash is true for diadelphous stamens. Diadelphous, it has something to do with the grouping of the stamens. Remember that. So, stamens are free. No, stamens are free means they are not called as diadelphous. United in one bunch, no, that is monoadelphous, because mono means one. So, monoadelphous. United in two bunch. Yes, two means di. So, two bunch. So, option C is the right answer here. United in more than two bunches, not diadelphous. It is polyadelphous. So, therefore, here the right answer here is united in two bunches, that is option C. Next, the part of flower that has style, ovary and stigma is called stamen. No, because stamen has anther and filament. Pedicel, pedicel is the stalk of the flower. Petiole, petiole is the stalk of the leaf. It is carpel. So, carpel, or they can give the option here as gynoecium. Gynoecium as well. So, the part of a flower that has style, ovary and stigma is called carpel. Next, dash is not true about stigma. What is the question? I have to find out which is not true about stigma, or they can frame the question as dash is false about stigma. Both are one and the same. It receives pollen. Of course, stigma, it is a receptive organ that receives pollen. So, therefore, this is not the right option here. It is connected to style. It is sticky and hairy. It produces pollen. Of course, it is connected to a style because that filament, it is called as the style. It is sticky and hairy. Of course, for it to retain the pollen grain, it is sticky and hairy. Next, it produces pollen. No, because pollen is produced by the anther. Stigma doesn't produce the pollen because it is the female reproductive part of the flower. So, therefore, option D is not true about stigma, or option D is false about stigma. Next question. Dash is the term used for fused carpels. Epicarpus, apocarpus, syncarpus. Syncarpus means fused carpels. Apocarpus means free carpels. Epicarpus, it's not there. So, none of the above is also not the right answer. The answer here is option C, syncarpus. Apocarpus means free carpels. Syncarpus is fused carpels. Ovules born on central axis with no septals is dash type of placentation. Marginal, no. Marginal means they are born on one particular margin, arranged in one margin only. Axial means they are born in the center only, but they have locules. They are born in the axis of the locule. So, therefore, it is not axial placentation. Parietal placentation means they are born at the periphery or side of the margin of the ovule, therefore ovary. Therefore, that is also not the right option. Option D, free central. So, free central is a type of placentation which is born on the central axis and there is no septals there. So, that is why the placentation or the arrangement of ovules is free central in that particular case. So, here option D is the right option. So, based on other placentations also questions can be framed. So I've just put one here. So based on this also questions can be framed. So this was about the session wherein we learnt about the gynoecium and the androecium, and also we got to know some of the MCQs under this particular topic. So this was about the session. I hope you understood this session well. We shall meet again in the coming session wherein we'll take up a new topic under this particular chapter and learn the MCQs under it. So see you in the next session. Thank you.